Hello, this is AnlineOffline. Welcome back to another casual's quick guide to Call of Duty Mobile. For today's video, we'll be covering the Kilo bolt action. Not to be confused for the 1-for-1 rifle from 2019. The Kilo is a bolt action marksman rifle added in the Season 9 Gunsmith update. It's based on the Kar98k, which appeared in all World War II Call of Duty games and Modern Warfare 2019. Why it's not called such in mobile is beyond me. The Second Industrial Revolution saw technological innovations and imperial expansion. Smokeless powder made earlier black powder rifles obsolete, and to stay in the arms race, the German Empire turned to Mauser, who previously introduced the stripper clip. Safe and reliable, the Gewehr Octane 9C and its variants are one of the most produced firearms in history. In the lead up to World War I, the Germans invested in a variety of optics for its snipers. Advancements in tech led many to believe that wars would be quick and long range. Instead, trench warfare was a grueling impasse, and a shorter carbine was better suited for close-range combat in the event of a trench raid. The Treaty of Versailles severely punished the new Weimar Republic. The Reichswehr had their Gewehrs modified into the misnomer Karabiner 98B to abide by imposed military restrictions. However, that didn't stop Mauser from quietly selling new standard models to the post office and exporting to other countries as early as the mid-20s. Since the brown shirts, or SA, were already fond of it, a short carbine variant was adopted in 1935 as the Kar98k after their rise to power. Germany didn't originally issue as many optics for snipers in World War II as they prioritized mechanized vehicles and machine guns. The Wehrmacht was forced to reconsider when they were repelled by the Soviets. It was evident that the German economy was not sustainable, and the 98k's design was simplified into the minimalist Kriegsmodell. The Soviets captured 98ks throughout the war and gave them to their communist allies in China and Korea as hand-me-downs. Since the Kar98k was the standard service rifle of the Nazis, it's a given that it appears in World War II media like Call of Duty. For mobile, base damage per shot is high, but compared to other bolt actions, the one-shot potential is less consistent. You can one-shot to the arms, chest, and head in its first range. Past that, the forearms will no longer apply. To alleviate this, the fire rate is on the faster end of bolt actions at 63 rounds per minute, but it's slower than the Outlaw, Hammerforged Tundra, and semi-autos. If you don't mind trading fire rate for consistency, then you can equip stopping power like in World at War. You gain 25% more range, and your body multipliers are increased. The forearms will now deal 30% extra damage like the biceps and chest. The stomach will now deal 50% extra like headshots. Thus you can one-shot anywhere above the legs like the DLQ in 100 HP multiplayer. However, this does reduce your fire rate down to 58 rounds per minute and makes you reload and ADS slower. In real life, the Kar didn't have Thermite Rounds, but they did have Beobachtung rounds which contained white phosphorus. Regardless, it functions like its later Rytec counterpart by increasing body multipliers and inflicting burn damage, but this comes at the cost of being slower and reduced base damage. You can no longer one-shot and must rely on burning. In its first range, you can fully burn someone with one shot to the legs. Past that, you'll have to land above the legs. If an enemy player is using flak jacket, you can no longer afford to target the legs. If they are using Dauntless, they'll hold on longer and you'll need headshots at longer ranges. Not to mention that the player can also heal themselves mid-burn. And like with the Rytec, spamming is bugged and can cancel further burns. In terms of mobility, the Kilo's base movement is fast for its class. It is tied with the SKS, SPR, XPR, and EPR, but it lacks attachments to boost it. The Kilo has a base ADS speed faster than what other bolt actions can hope to achieve with attachments. Swap times are similar to that of SMGs, and mag capacity is locked at 5. Reload cancelling is not very satisfying, and feels rather redundant as you have to fully cycle the bolt to do so. unlike most other snipers. As for accuracy, the Kilo has a base breath hold time of 2 seconds like the SPR and Outlaw, more than one if you build for speed, and half a second at its worst. From what I've seen so far, only the Outlaw and SPR have worse idle sway than the Kilo. For better or for worse, using iron sights and having your FOV synced makes it less noticeable. And last but not least, the Kilo has the worst base flinch in the game. The runner-ups are the DLQ and Locust, but those pale in comparison to how much the Kilo can kick when built for speed. When the Kar, or Kilo, was added 3.5 years ago, it was overshadowed by the larger Gunsmith update. Functionally, it's the same as its 2019 counterpart, with a few changes. First, stopping power was a field upgrade in 2019, but didn't work with the Kar in that game. Second, using a magnified optic blocked the Kar's ability to use stripper clips, and forced players to reload each round individually, like pump or lever actions. In real life, you can offset a scope to still use clips, but in mobile, our optics are situated further up and don't get in the way. That and we don't have its signature scope. Despite introducing a new class of weapons, the Kilo didn't stand out except for the Lazarus blueprint, which was a bugged 20-round semi-auto, months before the SKS was leaked. A couple seasons later, Thermite Rounds were added and was the first of its kind, but blank scoping snipers had already taken over by this point. The following season, the semi-auto bug was fixed and the SKS was later released. Early 2021 saw blank scoping nerfed, but sniper mains still refrained from using the Kilo in subsequent marksmen. Multiple meta shifts later, the Kilo finally got an ADS buff at the end of that year. Season 4 of 2022 saw marksman rifles gain access to the improved version of Disable, but this benefited LMGs and the SKS more. It then got an animation optimization. After a year of neglect, 2023 provided buffs. Season 3 finally buffed stopping power and added its sprint dots, which have been missing since its release. Season 7 buffed its ADS speed again, which would have been nice, but it now gets hard countered by LMGs, which deal more flinch due to impact. And lastly, it got a reload buff the next season. Compared to the base SPR, the base Kilo has slightly more range, steadier idle sway, faster ADS, and fire rate. The SPR can one-shot to the stomach up close, has less flinch, faster potential movement, and slower but more reliable reload cancel. But that's just their base versions. Stopping power is more consistent than 300 Norma, since the latter was shadow nerfed and reverted to its previous bugged state. With that being said, I'd still go with the SPR. Even though it's technically worse on paper, it's usable without the toughness green perk. Much of what was said about the SPR also applies to the Outlaw, but it has a faster fire rate. One reason to prefer scopes over iron sights is that you don't flinch until you're fully ADS. Having a scope makes it more clear. I thought I would dislike Thermite Rounds, but I don't hate it for the Kilo. I wasn't able to show it, but Thermite Rounds do make quick work of stealth choppers. Another thing is that they can somewhat be toxic when playing OPJ. If you use the Rytec, Molotovs, or regular Thermites, other players are more likely to switch to a class with Flak Jacket or Dauntless. But because no one expects anything from the Kilo, they're more willing to suck it up. And the Rytec is a semi-auto, and is more likely to encounter a burn glitch by spamming. The Kilo has potential, but has some glaring flaws. So what does it need? Firstly, there is no reason for the Kilo to have this much flinch. It's more reasonable to give it the same base values as the runner-ups, the DLQ and Locust, which are more well-rounded. Secondly, the reload cancels could be better by shaving off a fraction of a second. And it's not unreasonable for the devs to do this because they just did so with the Echo, which was one of my biggest issues with it. And last but not least, it's time for the Kar to finally get its signature scope. If the devs want to go the extra mile, they could make it so that it blocks stripper clips, and you have to reload individual rounds like the Mark II carbine. Although, it's rarely an issue for the latter. But hey, that's just my opinion. This has been a Casual's quick guide. Feel free to suggest what weapons you want to see covered next. My name is On, and I'm off.